So I was going to kind of entitle today's talk, uh,
Mhm.
Pink is for Boys and Blue is for Girls.
Right.
Now that doesn't sound right, does it?
No, no.
Well, it's a very.
Traditionally,
Hmm.
we have humans or we common folks have been groomed that
Right.
the color spectrum of red, which includes pink and
Yes.
to a certain degree purple,
Yes.
typically associates to the female sex.
Yes. And.
And while all
Hmm.
other colors, primarily the non-red spectrum ones,
Uh-huh.
are commonly associated to male gender.
And the question is, how did these associations take place? And why is it that we as a society seem to think that it's random? It somehow just magically happened accidentally to be like that. Well, guess what? There's very little, if anything, that accidentally happens in our society because we
Mhm.
are conditioned, we are groomed, we are
That's right.
indoctrinated, we are
That's right.
advertised to, and we are controlled. And the reason I bring up pink and blue is because of a fascinating and almost completely eliminated from the public record marketing experiment done
Mm.
in the 1920s
Oh.
by a man named Edvard Bernays.
Mm.
Now, Edvard Bernays, again, nobody ever heard of him. Well, he wrote the book on propaganda,
Mm.
except he didn't call it propaganda, he called it marketing.
I see.
Because that's what propaganda is. It's selling somebody a message. And it has absolutely no difference whether it's a message about soap or it's a message about a public policy.
Yep.
It's all about how to get you to believe something. Now, this guy, Edvard Bernays, wrote this book, and I don't often mention books and people's names, but it's so pivotal. Basically,
Mm.
Joseph Goebbels in Germany
Mm-hmm.
based his entire propaganda machine on Bernays'
Mm-hmm.
book,
Mm.
which is funny because Bernays was Jewish.
How ironic.
And his wife was the niece of Sigmund Freud.
Oh. Hmm.
So
Fascinating.
Goebbels admired him so highly that he read his book in secret, no doubt,
Mm-hmm.
and then didn't tell anybody that he got all of his ideas from Bernays.
Mm.
But Bernays came up with these, what we call in today's language, Freudian concepts for
Mm-hmm.
mass marketing and the control of the herd psychology or the mass psychology of human beings. And a lot of people in those days didn't necessarily believe that Freud was correct, you know. A lot of people didn't get this Greek stuff, you know, the Oedipus
Right.
conflict that you secretly have a desire to have sex with your mother and you want to kill your father because he's competing with you for her or something. I mean, a lot of this
Mm.
stuff that seemed pretty strange to a lot of people, and they weren't really going to buy that. But then all of a sudden, people like Bernays started to take Freud's theoretical concepts and apply them in
Mm.
real life. And Bernays was an American, and in the 1920s there was an economic boom after World War One, and even
Right.
even during World War One there was an economic boom in the states because remember the states was not directly involved until the last few months of the war, and hardly much at that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was mostly economics, and the money pouring into the U.S. was phenomenal,
Yes.
and it was an even bigger boom than that post World War Two in money terms. And Bernays wanted to get some advertising contracts, so he went to I believe it was Sears Roebuck, which was a huge department store at that time, or it could have
Mm-hmm.
been Macy's. I don't know. And he made a bet with them. He said, "I can use my techniques of mass marketing and psychological control to
Mm-hmm.
change the public concept that pink is for boys and the blue is for girls." Did you know? Did you know that in the 19 teens, in the early decades of the 20th century, that those
Yes.
were the color coordinations?
Mm.
And you can see that there's a lot of men that were raised in pink in the tens and the 20s, and then later in life they still wore it because they were kind of behind the times, and it kind of turned into a faux pas. For example, there's a movie, I can't remember the name, starring Frank Sinatra, where he's wearing a bright hot pink sweater. I think it was one of the Ocean's 11 Rat Pack movies, and the people kept saying to him, "Hey, yeah, that's kind of like a gay color now. Men aren't supposed to wear hot pink anymore." But Frank Sinatra was such an egomaniac, and he was so popular and powerful. He said, "I don't care. I wore this color when I was a little baby, and I'm going to wear this color now." Another person from Hollywood famous for wearing pink was a B movie film director called Ed Wood, and so he would always wear a pink shirt. And the point is that these guys were bucking a trend, because what Bernays did is he did an advertising campaign in the 1920s using store mannequins.
Yes.
Because Freud says that we have the herd instinct, that if we see somebody else doing something, subconsciously we want to fit in and be a part of that group and do what they're doing too. And that we suspend our discernment. We don't question why everybody is doing something else. We don't really question deeply why everybody is getting vaxxed. We just follow them because they're doing it already.
Correct.
And we feel that if we're not part of that group, there's something wrong with us and we're going to be shunned. It's almost like a pack of animals, like wolves or elephants. And if you get kicked out of the herd and you're banished, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. So subconsciously, and this is Freud again, we want to be part of the group.
You bet.
So Bernays put all the Sears Roebuck mannequins, boys in blue, and the girls in pink, and started marketing all kinds of things like paint colors for bedrooms and things like that, and put articles in magazines saying that pink was a very soothing color for girls and boys, and the blue was a very masculine and an outward color, and it would make them more satisfied with themselves, and all these psychological things, and it worked. And by the time the 40s and the 50s rolled around, in the public concept, everybody was painting their little kids' rooms blue for boys, pink for girls, and dressing them in those fashions. And it's, by the way, a backgrounder on this. During the 19th century and earlier, babies were always dressed in white because it was a way to keep things clean. So traditionally, there was no color association because, white was seen as cleanliness. So people who could afford it would always wash the children's whites.
Correct.
And that, of course, poor people didn't have the luxury of caring what color their children were dressed in.
Right.
So there was no strong, deep-seated color allegiance, and Bernays capitalized on that. And of course, he proved his point, and then he became probably the most successful advertising guru in American history, which everybody consulted him. He was just a fun, and he wrote his book, and it was incredibly, instrumental. So there you go. I mean, look at Hollywood. What do we have? We have influencers.
Of course.
Well, what the earth is an influencer? Well, an influencer is somebody that depends on the cabal for their job, for their movie contract, right? They work. They work for somebody who's telling them what to say.
Indeed.
Like Billie Eilish, who absolutely knows nothing about politics and is just a 18 or 19-year-old. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the last election, she comes out and says, "I hate Donald Trump, and please vote for Bill Biden." Huh? What? that girl has absolutely no idea what she's talking about, because she's being told what to say, because a lot of 19-year-olds and early 20s people are influenced by her, and that goes for all the other movie stars too. You can see it like clockwork. There's a war in Ukraine. Oh, which Hollywood movie stars are free right now that we can put into the mix to come out with anti-Russian propaganda to support the war in Ukraine? Oh well, let's send somebody like you know who's that guy that went there with a film crew and then had to escape the country when he ran out of gas and walked all the way back to the Ukraine border. Um, his name escapes me right now. He's a big Hollywood movie star and used to be married uh, to somebody famous as well.
At this moment, I can't recall.
Yeah, me too. Because I'm not
That's
really
okay.
plugged into this.
Right.
But the stars are obviously just completely controlled and manipulated, and they have to say what their handlers tell them to say because
That's
that's their
right.
job. They are
That's right.
hired manipulators.
That's right. It's kind of like Britney Spears,
Yep.
and yeah, and the most recent court case about her handlers.
Yes.
She broke free from the handlers. She starts to gradually expressing her own true self.
Yes. Now,
So it looks like the handler was having an upper hand over her daily lives and everything.
well, yes. Now we don't even have to talk about whether there's actual mind control going on with these people, which there might be.
Right?
A lot of them were in the industry since they were children, and
That's right.
we do know that there were many programs for taking children and fractioning or
Mm-hmm.
fracturing their psychology so that
Yes,
they could be programmed just like you would program a computer
that's
to
right.
do various
That's
things.
right.
And we know that there are cases like the Sirhan assassin of Robert Kennedy,
Of
who
course.
suddenly, you know, after the assassination, drop their gun, put their hands up, and go, "Who am I, and what am I doing here?"
Mhm.
And have no memory of that event since.
Yes, and uh, it's been discussed and to be believed that it has something to do with MK Ultra.
Yes, and I believe that there is a lot to that. But you don't even need to prove that people were mind controlled as children to see that it's obviously in their career interest. In other words, if you don't come out and support what Hollywood executives are telling you to say, you're not going to
Right.
get that next movie job.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yes.
think about this in practical terms. Should we
Hmm.
be looking to celebrity movie stars or pop music stars who are the most privileged and spoiled people on the planet,
Hmm.
who have in the 99% of them have never been to university.
Hmm.
More than 50% of them haven't graduated from high school because they were child stars. They don't need an education
Indeed.
because they were making millions when they were 10.
Right.
These people not only are the least educated and the richest and the most spoiled, but have absolutely no expertise in the political sphere whatsoever and don't know anything about humanitarian work because they've been living lives of luxury.
Of
So
course.
why should we listen to Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, Giga Haddad, uh, Leonardo DiCaprio, Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds? Why should we be listening to any of their opinions about the Ukraine? Do they have any idea what they're talking about? Do they have any education in that field?
Most likely
Have they
they
ever?
don't.
No, they don't, and they've never even been there. And since a lot of these people haven't even graduated from high school, I doubt if they even know where it is on the map.
Indeed.
So that is the situation we're in, where young people are actually influenced by this trash, this low level of intellectual, uh, resonance, and they actually believe that. And why? Well, let's go back to Marshall McLuhan. And what did he say? The great Canadian philosopher. He said, "It's not the content; it's the
Hmm.
medium that's the message."
Yes. Yes.
If you're getting it on your cell phone or in your computer or on your face screen, that's all that matters. The actual content of
Right.
what you're getting is irrelevant.
Right. or even coming from the tellies.
Now, Goebbels knew this in World War II in the 30s because he had control over the broadcasting system in Germany
That's
and
right.
radio, and then later in the 30s, they even had TV. And the
That's
thing
right.
is that if you control that medium, and which is state controlled, broadcasting,
Propaganda machine.
the propaganda
Yes.
machine, and the first thing the Germans did when they took power in 1933 was close all the opposition newspapers.
That's right.
First thing. They did that before they even had the anti-Jew laws,
Hmm, hmm.
because that's what's
And
important.
right, and then throughout the throughout the Nazi period
Yep.
in Second World War, they actually Goebbels and the Nazi propaganda machine actually controls all the radio broadcasts
Completely.
and so on and so forth. And for certain districts, they're so afraid of the local Germans being able to receive counter messages
Yes.
from abroad,
Yes.
like outside of their home country.
Yes.
They were the Nazis actually came out with a rather cunning idea of giving them a box type
Yep.
radio receiver set called
Pe-
Camper
yeah. People's radio.
People's Radio that doesn't actually tune to the radio broadcast.
It only
It's
works.
It only works if there's some kind of cablings or something going on in your district.
That's hilarious. It was tuned
That's right.
to the state radio stations, and
That's
it
right.
had some technology, so it couldn't actually pick up foreign
That's right.
broadcasting. Now,
That's right.
I believe that I just saw the other day that RT, which is the Russian news service, has
Right.
been banned from broadcasting in the or being carried by many American news media.
Hmm, hmm.
They just banned it, and
Right.
this is the beginning of all crime in humanity when you ban the truth.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
what everyone believes is a lie, and that is what has allowed the the terrible situation of prison planet Earth,
Hmm.
whereby we might even be nothing more than a farm,
Correct.
supplying biological materials at horrendous human cost
Yes.
to a parasitic entity of some sort.
Hmm, hmm,
So if that's
hmm.
our situation, and how did we get into that situation? Well, it's because we've been lied to. It's just like you don't tell the chickens that they're going to go into that factory and get turned into McNuggets.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they might run away.
Exactly. Exactly. And my belief is that for starters, it's never too late
Mm-hmm.
for people to start thinking about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Shut off the computer, shut off the tellies,
Yes.
turn off the cell phone, look away from the cell phone for a split second
Yes.
and think about yourself, oneself.
Yes.
Are you like, what is your role? What is your responsibilities in the surface of the earth?
Yes.
And why would you come to this stage in life on planet Earth?
Yes.
And also, like, where are you heading? By
Yes.
shutting off your visual or audio senses from the medias,
Yes.
you are basically clearing all the noise,
Mm-hmm.
conditioning, and possibly
Mm-hmm.
the propagandas that came along through those channels.
Mm-hmm.
And by shutting off your senses that way, even just for a split moment, like 5-10 minutes or so,
Mm-hmm.
gradually you will clear your mind
Yes.
and be able to establish your position in this world, in this life.
Well, yes, but the problem is, who does that? Does the
Unfortunately, people have been conditioned since they were born
yes.
and they subconsciously, it's kind of like a drug, an
Absolutely.
addictive drug.
And
Okay,
education
people are
has,
conditioned to crave for more and more and more. For example, like those young teenagers all craving for K-pops or something like that,
right.
to the point where some of the local mainstream fast food chains actually put that out, like, oh, it's the K-pop series of food and the sauce is awesome, blah 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 blah
Yes.
blah. It's like it's all marketing ploy, it's all conditioning. And
Yes.
ultimately it's the marketing firm or the people behind the scenes that benefit it all in the name of mind control.
Yes, and what they try to do is project the image that
That's right.
all of what you see is just a
That's right.
response to public demand. They keep saying
Exactly.
things like, "Oh, this is supply and demand. The people want this, the people want that." No, the people don't want anything until they're conditioned to want it. And
Exactly.
that's what we're seeing right now. And I remember reading a book by a philosopher named Philip Marcuse, he written in the 1950s, and it was a very insightful book, and it basically said that we are so stupefied, we're so
Yes.
overwhelmed with entertainment and with distractions and with emotional persuasions.
Mm-hmm.
We're so overwhelmed by that, we're stupefied, and our objective intellect can't operate, and then we're in a psychologically a vulnerable position where we can be programmed. So
Indeed.
first you take the subject and overwhelm them with sensory information and desires for luxury products or entertainment or whatever it is, and then once you've got that their internal objectivity turned off, then you can
That's
start
right.
inserting the material that you'd like to program through those mediums that you've opened. And he ended up saying that, the most free and independent thinkers in the Western world were behind the Iron Curtain. They were in the East Bloc,
Right.
in those days, the Soviet Union. And he said
That's right.
the reason is because those citizens know very well that their government is lying to them, and they know very
Indeed.
well that they live in a world of propaganda because it's extremely
Indeed.
blatant, it's extremely obvious, and the governments don't rule by direct manipulation, they rule more by fear. So you know that the government's lying to you, but you're afraid to do anything about it. Whereas in
Exactly.
the West, we're far more imprisoned psychologically
Yes.
because we have
That's right.
no idea that the government is lying to us and we actually believe their bullshit.
That's correct. Unfortunately, yes.
So here we have a world where democracy means prison and totalitarianism leads to enlightenment. Now, what kind of an upside down universe is that?
That just goes to show how sick our society, our world has become.
And when you're very sick or when you're very vulnerable, you're going to get diseases like vaccinations
Mm-hmm.
or war
Mm-hmm.
or selfishness and hate against visible minorities
Indeed, yes.
or anything else that will serve to divide us and keep us helpless.
Bravo. Very well said.
Let's talk again later.
Absolutely. Stop.
Bye bye.
Bye.